Many bands and performers have shifted genres over their careers. Yes and Genesis slowly transitioned from classic 70s prog rock to 80s synth rock. John Mayer made a big deal about his shift to blues, and lots of rockers found their way to more acoustic music. But in my personal experience, no change was as drastic or as quick as the one made by Theatre of Tragedy. With their first 3 albums, this band helped pioneer the burgeoning genre of gothic metal. A prime example from this era would be their song And When He Falleth. Their guitars were slow, heavy, and accompanied by layers of symphonic keyboard. They helped popularize the so-called Beauty and the Beast style of vocals, characterized by the contrast between the graceful, operatic female vocals of Liv Christine and the deep, heavy metal growls of Raymond Rahoney. This sound would influence many big metal bands, such as Epica, Nightwish, and the early works of Within Temptation. Lyrically, these albums were written in an old Shakespearean English, and focused on topics like death, forlorn romance, and classical legend. Many of their songs are listed as soliloquies, poems, or plays that have their contrasting vocalists argue, converse, and overlap. After changing their 2 guitarists and losing their bass player, the band would decide on a new direction for the year 2000. In October, they released the album Musique. Gone were the slow, melancholic guitars, absent were the death metal growls, all replaced with a faster, brighter, and more electronic sound. Give the track Machine a listen for a good example of what this album sounded like. Heavy use of synths took over alongside programmed drums. The guitar was there, but it took a backseat to the electronica atmosphere. The same male and female vocalists remained, but Liv sang a more pop-rock style, and Raymond gave up his growls for a filtered, monotone sort of singing you often hear in synthpop, more akin to Covenant or a pop-tigma Berserk. Their lyrical style also got a facelift, and were now in modern English singing about technology, the modern world, and electronic music itself. The band knew this was a drastic shift, how could they not, and even entertained the thought of changing their name. But they were still the same band, with the same dual vocalists, drummer, and keyboardist that had been there since the beginning. Drastic shift or not, to them, this was a logical and necessary change of direction. See, by the year 2000, the goth metal scene had become cluttered with imitators who directly or indirectly copied the Theatre of Tragedy sound. 1997 had seen the first album by Within Temptation, which featured heavily the Beauty and the Beast vocals. 1998 would see the debuts of bands Tristania, Trail of Tears, and Sins of Thy Beloved, 3 examples of goth metal bands who would borrow Theatre's use of contrasting male and female vocals, and there were many, many others who did the same. In the words of drummer Hansen in an online interview in 2000, the band had become tired of the scene that they helped create. We didn't like the scene because it was becoming very limited, you know. There are some rules and you have to do this, and that. So the point is that the whole thing became a bit cliché, and we wanted to escape our own borders and limitations. It'd be easy to hear this music and assume they were selling out, trying to make more radio-friendly work. But it's clear the band was just making music that they liked and wanted to make. Various members have been open about loving bands such as Nine Inch Nails, Kraftwerk, and Depeche Mode. For them, selling out would be doing more of the same. In 2006, keyboardist Lorenz would say to Metal Storm, "We needed to change our way of expressing ourselves, because that was the way we could still have the music exciting and fun. Of course, it was not fun to be called sellouts and stuff like that, but we knew if we continued the path we had earlier, we really would have been sellouts, because then we would make music for others than ourselves." In 2002, they'd released the album Assembly, and further refined their hybrid style of electronica and metal. This proved that their genre shift was not some one-off project, and that, for now, they would stick to their guns. Fan reaction was, predictably, mixed. German fans at a concert in 2000 threw bottles at the band, and in many interviews, band members would recount how their audience felt. Lorenz again, from Metal Storm, said, "The metal audience might be the hardest to get through sometimes. They all like to be so true metal that they cannot have anything fuck with their music in a different way. I might sound a bit harsh and fed up, but we received so much piss after releasing these albums." It was not all negative though. Musique was their highest charting album ever, perhaps thanks to them being recently signed to Nuclear Blast, one of the biggest heavy metal record labels. It sold well, as did Assembly, and fans were still showing up to their concerts. But you don't see a lot of bands listing this era of Theatre of Tragedy as a major influence. Reviews from professional music critics in the year 2000 can be hard to find, but they all seem to be just as confused and conflicted as the fans. Nathan T. Burke derogatorily described it as machine-dominating man for Inc. 19 magazine. Jason Anderson, no, not that one, called it disjointed, even aimless, in a review for AllMusic. Of course, Theatre of Tragedy was not the only band who shifted to a more synthetic sound around this time, though few would take such a sudden turn. In 1999, goth metal band Paradise Lost released a very synth-heavy album, Host, but its atmosphere was still as melancholy as ever. My Dying Bride weaved electronic sounds and even industrial breakdowns into their 1998 album, 34% Complete, but they still stuck to the goth metal plan of slow, long, somber songs. One close comparison is the relatively unknown band Evereve, who, between their 1998 and 2001 albums, would inject heavy industrial beats and heavy use of synth. The turn of the century, in general, would see many musical acts start to embrace or at least experiment with what new technology could offer their music. Few made such a hard shift in mood and tone, though. Few bands around this time could be mistaken for entirely different bands between releases, as someone unfamiliar with Theatre of Tragedy could reasonably assume upon first listen. In 2003, vocalist Liv Christine would leave the band due to the ever-classic excuse of creative differences. With a new singer, Theatre of Tragedy would release Storm in 2006. Feeling like a missing link between Aegis and Musique, this album would look back at the band's goth metal roots with more modern sensibilities, erring almost to the side of goth rock, with only minimal electronica influence. This wasn't backtracking from their electronic sound. It was just another step in their exploration of what their sound could be. Their final studio release, Forever Is the World, would drop in 2009, and for the first time in 11 years, it would feature the metal growls of Raymond Rahoney. Their last release was in 2011, a live album called Final Curtain Call, and it would proudly feature performances of their industrial electronic songs alongside their classic goth metal epics. I don't really spend time with the electronic crowd, but I'm fairly sure they don't talk about Theatre of Tragedy much. The strange irony to their two electric albums is that despite their genre shifts, they don't really feel like normal electronica. They're not actually very danceable, and don't really hit what I think is a necessary sound needed to feel at home at dance clubs. Rammstein is arguably easier to dance to at times, and you wouldn't call them club music. But put most songs from these two albums on playlists with other high-energy metal bands, and they're gonna feel out of place most of the time. Too pop for metal fans, too weird for pop rock fans, and perhaps just not hitting the right buttons for electronica fans. I actually adore both these albums, but in my opinion, they represent a missed opportunity. See, in 2000, they released the EP In Perspective, which contained 3 industrial remixes of metal tracks from their earlier albums. Check out Icon of Coil's remix of Lorelei for the best example of these. These remixes feature a heavy electronica beat, and the contrast between the traditional goth metal vocals and the electronic synths and atmosphere create a really fun and unique experience. An album of that could have been phenomenal, and something like that around the year 2000 could have been a powerful bridge between two mostly disparate groups of fans, standing alongside Rob Zombie's Dragula. I think these albums are worth hearing, I'm just not super sure who to recommend them to. As it stands, these two albums represent a strange time for an influential metal band, a pair of oddities without a niche to really call home. I'll put some links in the description to some songs I've mentioned. Do let me know what you think of them. Does this band's sonic experiment strike a chord with you at all? If you know a more drastic genre shift for a band that still kept the same members, let me know as well. More videos are incoming, so be sure to subscribe. Until I see you again, take care of yourself.